All right, cool.
People done forgot the superpowers we all have. We were born to love, not hate.
Hello, 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 hello. Welcome, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy holidays. It is so nice to see so many familiar faces. Some of us haven't been together for a little while. Hey, Ben. It's great to see you. Hi, Jackie. It's good to see you. Hey. Hi, Cheryl. Nancy, Anna. Hello, hello. Hi, Craig. Hi, Laura. Hi, Natalie. Blair, how you doing? Michael, how you doing? Dr. Dan, Henry. Hey, everybody. Why don't we do this as we get ourselves getting ready to get started? Drop in the Zoom chat box. Where are we all zooming in from today? There's 100 of us as of right now. Where are we all here from? Chris from Toronto, Santa Barbara, the space station, Atlanta, Georgia, from Maryland, Texas, New York, Ohio, from Brussels, wonderful, from Paris, Katrina, that's cool. All right, everybody. Well, welcome from all around the world. I also want to recognize a number of you are here as members of the Exchange community. And for this special guest mentor session with a member of our community and a mentor to many of us, Raj Sisodia, all of us today. For this special session today, we also invited what we refer to as guest passes. And so there could be 20, 30 of you, 40 of you here who are here as guests because somebody who's a member of our community was given the opportunity to invite you. If you're one of those guests, give us one of these right here. Give us a wave of some sort. Hi, Zach. Hey, Drew, Rebecca, Laura, Diane. Great to have you here as a guest. Maybe some of you are a guest of me. It is so great to see you here, whether you're a part of our community on the regular or you're here as a guest. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're here as a guest, I'll give a one sentence or several sentence explanation right now. And then later on, if you want to know more about us, we'll tell you how to do that. But here at Exchange, we all stand for the belief that we can bring groups together in ways that bring out the potential of those groups at a speed and a scale that is possible, maybe even necessary in our world. And we have a methodology for facilitating that does that. And the large majority of those who are here today are members of our community, which means you all have been through our flagship 3-day online exchange experience training. And if you're a guest, it likely means one of those members or myself invited you to be here for this special session where we're going to get to spend time learning directly from Raj Sisodia. Before we do that, a quick note on the format for this session today. Do you all have a pen handy and or nearby? If you do, you want to grab it because we're going to be moving into an activity before we get any further. So the format for today, I'm going to be handing over a question. And then after that question, there will be a brief conversation. And then after that brief conversation, we'll bring you all back to the main room. The conversation will happen in breakout rooms, as most of you know. And then the main event, I'll be interviewing Raj Sisodia. And then we might close with one more brief reflection. So that's the 3-part flow. Before we're all done, for all of you who are here as members, I'm certain that I will remind you of some of our upcoming events because we've got some pretty exciting events coming up in the next couple months. But first, we're going to give all of us a question to invite presence. If you are ready to be here and nowhere else, please drop a note into the chat box right now. If you're ready to be here and nowhere else, drop a note into the chat. Very good. Our team is keeping an eye. And if you have a pen and a blank piece of paper, Mike, glad you're ready. Steve, awesome. Peter, awesome. Jackie, awesome. I'm going to give all of you a question right now. I'm going to change up the tune. And the question that I'm going to present is based on one of the topics that I have a feeling we are going to explore today. So give me just a moment. There we go. And one of the topics we're going to explore today is this topic of healing. And this is one of the recent books authored and published by Raj Sisodia, who will be learning from you, Raj. And even before we define or talk about what this means to be or support the creation of a healing organization, I want to ask all of you an interesting question. So we're going to let this get deep and reflective really quickly. We're going to let this get deep and reflective really quickly. The question that I'd like to give you, and I'll put it up on the overhead here, is why? Why is it important? Why is it important for what we do here at Exchange, in our workplaces, in our professional lives? Why is it important for us to invite healing? Why does this matter? Why does the world need us to become leaders, teachers, coaches, consultants, and I know that defines many of us here, organizational leaders? Why is this so important for us to create the conditions for healing to happen wherever we go? And of course, it's also includes ourselves. Why is it so important for us to invite healing in our workplaces? And if you even want to take this question and bring it into your home, wherever you want to bring this question, why is it important for us to invite healing at work, at home, and in our world right now? Whatever comes up for you, I encourage you to take a moment and just capture whatever thoughts emerge through the ink in your pen. Why is it important for us to invite healing at work, at home, in the world, in ourselves? What is it about this topic that makes being here today important for you, for us, for those we serve? I'll give you a moment now just to be alone with this question. And wherever you're at, I'll give you just one more moment to capture one more reflection that comes up for you. Why is it important for us to invite healing in ourselves, in our work, at home, in the world? Why does this matter? There's certainly not one answer, not one right answer. What comes up for you? All right, wherever you're at in your reflection, thanks for your understanding and that I know I'm likely interrupting some deep, possibly very deep reflection. We're going to invite you now into small groups. There's a good chance these will be mostly groups of 3. If you're a member of the Exchange community, you've done this kind of thing before. It's what we do. It's what we teach. It's how we bring groups together. If you're here for the first time, our encouragement is be you. And that's it. And to whatever extent you're ready and able to be engaged and present for each other. So here's what we'll do. Invite the first person, whoever is of the head or heart, to share whatever comes up in response to that question. And then actually what we'll do is we'll ask the other 2 to share approximately 1 minute each, right? 1 minute or less. So please do your very, very best. This is not the TEDx talk rehearsal. It could feel like that. And then after everybody shares, go back around, And invite your voices in. Is there anything you can notice or appreciate about what was shared? Maybe there's common themes or patterns. Maybe there's something unique and different, or just something that you might want to appreciate that somebody said. You're going to be in these breakout groups only for about 5 minutes. We will let you know. You'll be in there for 5 minutes. We'll let you know when there's 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute left. Encourage you to enjoy connecting with each other. Maybe you make a new friend. We'll see y'all in just about 5 minutes, everybody. Cheers. I hit record here. We will start with Rachel and then come to Lisa and then go from there. Rachel, anything you wanted to share, please do.
Yeah, wonderful to be here. Big fan of this book. Highly recommend. So what we talked about is just that all of us are wounded and we're carrying around these unresolved wounds and from when the time we were little, and they show up as reactivity, in the words of Dr. Danny, and disconnection and dysfunction, and they affect the ways that we lead and the ways that we interact with each other, the ways that we parent, the way that we interact with strangers. They affect our physical, emotional, mental health and well-being. And because we spend so many of our waking hours at work or on work or involved with work, like, could there be a better place? I don't know that there could be a better place to really focus our efforts on this. And healing is so important because we can only take people to the level we've gone ourselves. And if we're having people that are not coming from a place of their own healing, it's going to be really hard for them to guide other people on that journey. So, we were all in agreement, all of us that were focused on well-being in our group, actually, how that worked out, just really believe in the power of this work and how important it is now more than ever.
Rachel, thank you for what you just shared. Thank you for sharing that. So meaningful. Thank you. Lisa, please, anything you'd like to share?
I would like to share deep appreciation to Dr. Kakashan and to Jenna, who's a guest today, for allowing the energy that I had about this question to just show up and to be received. There was a pull through for us around generational healing that needs to happen and what's being pulled through and passed down. We talked about it in organizations as well as in parenting, and how important it is to just recognize that sometimes the best gift we can give ourselves is to ask this question. So I was inspired to bring this question to dinner tonight, and very grateful to be here. And I just really appreciate how deeply this, because this could be such a complicated question for anyone, but as working with leaders in tech, I see this every day. And so to phrase it the way you did, John, was just really useful for us to open up and go deeper fast. I just wanted to recognize the power of the question and the beauty I experienced in it. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Lisa. Generational healing. Thank you for sharing that. We'll come to Delinda, and then I might be able to get to one more after that, and I appreciate everyone's understanding that we've got a lot of ground we're going to cover, so likely won't be able to get to more hands beyond Delinda. But thank you for everyone's willingness to jump in. That alone says a lot, and it's appreciated. Delinda, anything you wanted to share, please do.
Well, first of all, I'm a guest of Ron Hill's today, and he leads our Senior Leader Network, Conscious Capitalism Network, our mastermind group. So thank you, Ron. There's quite a few of us from our group here today. And the thing that we came up with, what was why it was so important to invite healing, was because if it's not me, then who? And that there's a real responsibility for us to provide healing in the world. And we all shared that. And I'm new to this group. I participated yesterday, and I'm not a coach, but I really love this. And I'm hosting an event tonight, or a gathering of women. And we call our group One Woman Can Do Anything, Many Women Can Do Everything. And it's just a new group here in San Diego. And we're just trying to figure out how we can bring healing. I hadn't used those words, but now I have those words to use tonight. So thank you.
Wow. Great to have you here as a guest, Alinda. Ron, thank you for inviting your Senior Leadership Network group and for what you shared. If not me, then who? Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that. We'll come to one more. We'll come to Todd. Todd, anything you wanted to share? And then we're going to move on from there. Please, Todd. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yes, I just wanted to thank my friend Jorge for inviting me today. I'm really struck by how just a short amount of time with two individuals I've never met is just inspiring and really interesting. But the thing we talked about was bringing our whole selves to work, and also to consider the whole world and consider all the things that are happening outside. So that we can be better resources for our clients. I'm an architect, and our goal is to work with visionary clients to help them make the world a better place. And I think when we come to the table with our whole selves and an open view of the whole world, what's happening outside our office, we can be a better resource for those people and making the world a better place. So, thank you for that conversation, for the opportunity for that conversation.
Glad to have you here, Todd. Jorge, thanks for inviting Todd, and thank you for what you just shared. Bringing our whole selves to work seems like a worthy invitation. We're going to transition here, and I'm going to bring up somebody who has been a mentor from afar for many years through his teachings. And then, Raj, I first met you 5 or 6 years ago. You had contributed as a speaker during an Appreciative Inquiry Whole System Planning Summit that I was a part of the team leading that summit for Clark back in 2016. And then most recently, Raj, we got reconnected. And most recently, you swam through our 3-day online exchange experience last week. So we've gotten to know each other really well, even just this year. Which is a reminder of the blessing and the gift that can be found even inside of a difficult time like right now, where while we're not all together physically, our access to each other, to people, experiences is still alive, maybe even more so than ever before. Raj, instead of giving a long formal introduction, everyone will be getting to know you, already has read about you on the way to this event. Many know of your work, and we'll be digging into some of your work. As the author of Firms of Endearment, Conscious Capitalism, the Healing Organization. I'll just leave it at this, and this is sufficiently insufficient as an intro, but we want to get to you and your teachings. You have tilted the way many, many leaders around the world see the purpose of business, and you're doing it again and again. And so I'll just say thank you for what you've done for me and for us. And at this time, if any of you are able and willing or interested, you're all welcome to unmute and give any sort of warm welcome to our guest mentor today, Raj Sisodia.
Hi, Raj.
Great to see you again, Raj.
We're so
Welcome.
excited.
Thank you for being with us.
Raj.
Welcome.
Great to see you again.
Hi, Raj.
Welcome. Very excited. Welcome.
What about your parents?
What about my parents? Oh, in the background, you mean? You want to see my parents in the background? Okay. We can do that.
For those of us who were here last week, there you go.
Okay, there we are.
leave that there, and we'll get to that story, I'm guessing, in a little bit. All right. Raj, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, John. It's really a pleasure to connect with this amazing community. I'm happy to be with you.
You know, before I ask you about your life's work and teachings and how that brings us to the present moment, I would love to presence any reflections you have on the responses that were shared just now to that activity, from Rachel bringing to light that maybe many of us are wounded, to Lisa's observation around generational healing, to Delinda's calling for if it's not me, then who, to Todd's acknowledgement that this is about our whole selves. What are your responses to the question or the responses that you heard?
Well, I thought they were brilliant and on point, and I've experienced each of those myself. I believe that almost every human has some degree of post-traumatic stress injury. We may not have a disorder. We didn't go to Afghanistan or Iraq, so we minimize the traumas that we do have. And I think life is difficult, and everybody goes through traumas. And the fact is, most of us ignore them. We deny them, concealed them, and we kind of numb them in some ways, our responses to them, and we continually, therefore, relive them. I think what we need to do is to reveal them and feel them and heal them.
Mm.
That's really part of what I've done in my current book. So I think if we do that, then we can actually potentially experience what's called post-traumatic growth.
Mm.
It's not just about getting back to a neutral level. You can actually become stronger as a result of having gone through that trauma and learned how to heal from it. So I definitely relate to that. I think the generational healing, very, very critical. I mean, as I write about in my book, and maybe we'll talk about, I come from, there's a lot of intense trauma in my genes because of the background that I come from the warrior class in India, which, India has been invaded more than any other country on this planet, 200 times. And my forebears, my ancestors were really at the border, at the front line, dealing with, fighting many of those invasions. So there's a lot of trauma. And that shows up, if you don't heal that trauma or don't know what to do with it, it becomes abuse. And there was a lot of that, there was a lot of extremely abusive stuff in my family background, my grandfathers and others. So there's a lot of that. And I think that all needs to be healed, not only individually, but collectively. We need to address those kinds of things. And then if not us, who? I really believe that we have within each of us the ability to heal ourselves and to heal each other. And most of the suffering on this planet is caused by human beings towards other human beings and towards other life forms and towards nature. And all of the healing, therefore, also has to come from us. And I had an experience of that a couple of years ago, which maybe I'll share. I had a vision of exactly that. I saw this vision of all these people standing under the hot sun, waiting for a hug from this woman who's known as Amma, the hugging saint, who travels. She's from India. She travels all over the world, and people stand in line for 8 hours just to get a hug from her. And they experience unconditional love, and they're somehow healed from that. And they walk away in tears. And the message I got was that all these people standing in line, they could be hugging each other, that they have what they're looking for in each other and in themselves. You don't have to go to another place and find another person. We have what we need within us, right? We just need to activate it, to connect to it, and use it. So yeah, all of those I think were lessons that I've also learned.
Thank you for sharing that. There's a lot that you just unpacked that I think we'll visit here today. And what I'd like to do for those who are here who, whether they're familiar with your work or not, just as a way of anchoring all of us in the journey that you've been on, because I think it certainly is a important history to understand before we talk about the present moment journey for you. I've got in my hand 2 books, and one of them is Firms of Endearment. Another one is Conscious Capitalism. And many in our community know that a number of years ago, these 2 books were seminal. They were significant for me at Exchange in inspiring me to think about our purpose in the world. And one of the things I want to invite you to share, so we can hear it directly from you, is what brought these books about from within you. And in particular, there's, I think it's in Firms of Endearment. You would know, so you can clarify. I think it's in the opening of Firms of Endearment. One of the things that you point attention to, Raj, is that there's a cumulative culmination of events that in the last several decades point to this being a special moment in time. And you talk about how if we look at history across time in the last few hundred years, we've had all these advances, but even in just the last several decades, there's this convergence of events, and I think you referred to it as the age of transcendence. And I'd love to start there with what does that mean, and anything else you'd like to say about what brought these books into the world through you as a vehicle for anyone who might not be familiar with this work.
Sure. So David Wolf and I observed in that book that if you look at the history of the last couple of hundred years, and really starting in 1776 as a seminal year, in human history. That was the birth of the United States, of course, as an idea before it became a country. This is the only country that exists because of a set of ideas around freedom for the ordinary person, for religious, political, and economic. It was also the year of the publication of The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith's classic work, which talked about how individuals, this prosperity, that freedom leads to prosperity, that individuals pursuing their own perceived self-interest will create the conditions in society for everybody to rise up. And that was an incredibly empowering insight. And in the United States was the ideal place for those ideas to be implemented, because you truly had the common man, and it really was limited to men. Common man was in charge of his own destiny by right of law. You did not have to be born into the landed gentry or the aristocracy to rise from nothing to great heights, right? And so we label that as the age of empowerment, that this is the first time really on a society-wide level that individual human beings were empowered to realize their own God-given potential, right? By working hard and having the ambition to do so. So age of empowerment, we mark from 1776. It was kind of, capitalism and democracy marching hand in hand in a way, right? The United States being a unique exemplar for both of those things. And then we mark the next turning point around the year 1900, and we called it the age of knowledge. And this was when, we had the Industrial Revolution, of course, also starting in 1760. So we had that whole technological era that kind of continued. But around 1900, there was a shift, and we entered into a different realm of sophistication when it came to science. You had Einstein and, quantum physics, and you had all kinds of extraordinary innovations and breakthrough. And that really had a huge impact on society, transformed our life, right? The invention of radio and television and telecommunications and phones, and, airplanes and all the things that we all experience. I mean, it's incredible that these things just happened about 100 plus years ago. So that was the age of knowledge, which led to extraordinary material prosperity, right? It led to mass production, mass marketing, luxuries became affordable to ordinary people, etc. So the primary characteristic of the age of knowledge was really materialistic abundance and materialistic values in many ways, right? The American dream was all about what you can accumulate, what you can get, right? And then around 1990, we marked a turn that we were entering a new chapter, and we called it the age of transcendence, that we were now hungry for something beyond the material, right? Beyond the mundane, that the deepest source of satisfaction is something that goes beyond that. And really, the turning point was 1989. I don't know of any other year in which so many things came together at the same time, which were each of them a turning point in their own way. So we had the fall of the Berlin Wall, right? The Berlin Wall coming down. So that is the end of the defining debate of the 20th century between these competing visions, right? Communism, socialism, government ownership and control of every aspect of our life. And then we had democracy, freedom, capitalism, right? And that debate was over without a gunshot being fired. People thought that it would take a nuclear war, at some point to end that whole, divide that existed in the world, the Cold War, right? And suddenly it was over. So that was a significant turning point, right? Some people, Fukuyama called it the end of history, that in a way we were arriving at the end of a very, very significant chapter in human history. But 89 was also the year that Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web. And this empowered ordinary people with access to information, right? Way beyond the average person today has access to more information instantaneously at their fingertips, anytime, any place, for free than the richest billionaire in the world did back then, right? So this was an incredibly transformative thing that happened in 89. A less noticed thing was also that happened in 89 was a demographic shift. For the first time in this country, we had more adults over 40 than below. The median age of adults crossed 40. Now, 40 is a threshold that defines the advent of midlife. And we've all heard about the midlife crisis, and people joke about it, but it's a real thing. A crisis of meaning and purpose is what a midlife crisis really is. And typically, people would live their lives based upon certain priorities and values, most of which had to do with success in the world. And then around 40, they might have achieved a lot of that, and yet they feel hollow and unfulfilled. And that's when they turn to other things, right? They start volunteering for things that have nothing to do with their self-interest, but feeds a spiritual hunger. So that gets awakened in a big way. So we have that big shift in society, right? Where now the majority of adults were above that threshold, right? So this hunger for meaning and purpose. You saw the book, Rick Warren's book, A Purpose-Driven Life, right? Which is the highest selling hardcover in history, I think, after the Bible. So it just, it speaks to a hunger for meaning and purpose, right? And of course, you had many other, the whole telecom revolution that was happening. We have human intelligence has been skyrocketing now for 8 decades, growing at 3 to 4% a decade for 8 decades. You had access to education exploding. So all of these things basically marked a turning point, the entry of a new chapter, right? As I think Tom Stoppard wrote in Arcadia, a door like this has cracked open only 3 or 4 times since we got up on our 2 legs. It's the best possible time to be alive, and almost everything you thought you knew is wrong. So we have to rethink everything. That people have different aspirations. People are equipped now with tremendous intelligence, with education, with access to information, with connectivity, right? And they care about meaning and purpose and impact in their world. So I think all of these things came together at the right time to really now propel us into this new stage. And conscious capitalism is very much a part of that journey.
Raj, thank you for helping to create the context in that historical perspective, and that leads right to the subtitle of your book, Conscious Capitalism: Liberating the Heroic Spirit of Business. And there's a framework, and I know this is it's not new for some who are here, but hearing directly from you, can you unpack this framework? There's 4 pillars to conscious capitalism. Maybe you refer to it as 5. What would you say are the tenets of a business that has figured out how to unlock this heroic spirit? And what is that? What does that mean?
Yeah, so my pathway to conscious capitalism was, as you mentioned, through funds of endearment, and that book was born out of my frustration with traditional business. I had become a business professor somewhat accidentally, and I saw many of the things that were glaringly evident to me, but maybe not to other people, about how it was dehumanizing, how it was exploitative in many cases. It used people. It placed money. We act like money is the only game in town. There are other games in town. So money is an important part of our life, but it's not the only, most important or the only factor. So I had this constant search for a better way. And that then led me to ask certain questions. I think what I learned last week from the experience I had with you is the power of the right questions, right? Can unlock so much. And my questions were really about, does it have to be this way, right? Do we have to, only the paranoid can survive? It's a dog-eat-dog world, and there's no free lunch, and all of these cliches that we have. It's not personal, it's business, right? So that search, which I was never inspired or moved by the world of business. And then I had a distinct experience. I asked the question, which are the companies that are loved by their customers, but they don't have to spend a whole bunch of money on marketing, on ads and coupons, and yet their customers are loyal to them, right? With that simple question, I discovered a whole different way of being, and companies that were loved by everybody, employees, suppliers, communities, etc. And then what made that happen? They had shared purpose and shared values, right? They were trying to do something meaningful in the world, and they had values that put people at the center, and they cared about everybody. And then the distinct moment when I was writing some of these stories, and I found that I had tears in my eyes as I'm trying to write. And I said to my co-author, I said, David, I've never had tears of joy connected to my work. I've often experienced anger and frustration, like all of us do. But I said, I think my body is trying to tell me something, that this is what I think my purpose just found me. And I want to dedicate the rest of my life to telling this story of business, that there can be such deep humanity inside a business, a for-profit, publicly traded company, right? And then when we did the financial analysis at the end of our research, we had selected 28 companies that met these 4 pillars that we discovered, which I'll get to in a second. A higher purpose, right? The reason for being, that aligns everybody together, that everybody cares about. A conscious attention to the well-being of all of your stakeholders, not just your shareholders or your customers. Leaders who care about people and purpose, not just about power and ego and money. And a culture where people are valued and they actually love what they do, and they don't say, thank God it's Friday, and they love going to work and doing important work. So I discovered 28 companies, or we identified 28 companies that fit that mode, and we did the financial analysis. at the end of that, fully expecting that, they're paying their people much better, like double in some cases, Costco over Walmart. HEB says, please pay our people as much as possible, not as little as possible, right? Providing much better benefits. They're investing in their customer experience. They're paying their suppliers well. They're investing in their communities. They are even paying taxes at a higher rate. And I found that these companies had outperformed the market by 9-1 over a 10-year period. And this was a shock to us, actually, because we were still kind of mired in that zero-sum view of the world, that if you're paying your people more, it has to come out of somewhere, right? Maybe your investors, are getting less at the end of the day. But it turns out that's not the case, and everybody can win. And everybody can flourish at the same time. You don't have to rob Peter to pay Paul. Peter, Paul, and Mary can all do just fine, right? And so that became quite a revelation to me. And that's what then led to my connection with John Mackey, who read the book and loved it and invited me to spend a day. And, I had a vision, John, for what I was calling the Institute for New Capitalism, or INC. I have this fetish for acronyms. So I said in INC, I had a mind map with the whole vision laid out, that I want to spread this story of business in the world. This is not what I was taught. And this is not what most people think business is about. The business is just about the ruthless pursuit of profit. And I said, no, business can be beautiful. Business can be noble. It can be heroic, right? It can be, one of the most uplifting things in the world. And so he looked at that and he said, yeah, I have a similar vision, but I like the phrase conscious capitalism. And so that's why we decided to launch the movement. So again, we launched in 2008. We had our first conference that year in Austin, and now we're in a bunch of other countries and about 40 US cities. And I think these ideas are becoming mainstream. Not only our language around conscious capitalism, but all the other, you've all heard of shareholder capitalism and inclusive capitalism and B Corp and B Team and all the other shared value, etc. I think these ideas are now, we're at another kind of tipping point. And I was in Berlin in 2019, November 30th anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down. And we were having a Conscious Capitalism Europe conference, right? Literally in the shadow of that wall. There's a segment of it that still remains. And I feel like we are in the midst of our own Berlin Wall moment now when it comes to the capitalist paradigm. That there is a paradigm shift that is happening, that very few people are rising in defense of the old mindset, right? The singular focus on shareholder value. We've seen the downsides of that. We cannot afford the so-called externalities or side effects of business. It's destroying us. It's literally putting at risk our existence on this planet. So I think the time is right when people are looking for a different way. And I think this alternative narrative is catching on.
Raj, it's a pleasure to hear directly from you. You recounting the history of the conscious capitalism movement, how it was born. And it could have been called Inc. We heard it here. I wasn't aware of that part of the story. Well, I appreciate that phrase. We're in a Berlin Wall type moment. And I'm going to use that comment to transition here. And of course, any of you that want to go deeper, you all understand, you can explore the work we've been talking about. But I want to ask about this book, The Healing Organization, and subtitled Awakening the Conscience of Business to Help Save the World. So what is the premise of this book? And I'd also, to the extent that you're willing, I'd love to hear about the personal side for you of healing, because you've shared with me in private that this book, unlike maybe some of your prior bodies of work, it called you to go on a personal exploration in a new way. And I think it could be insightful, if not inspiring, for us to hear about that journey for you as we all consider, what does this mean for ourselves? So wherever you want to start on that, please.
Sure. Yeah, no, this is the genesis of this book. It happened through another acronym. So, for all the 4 tenets of conscious capitalism, I have an acronym, right? So for stakeholders, it is SPICY: society, partners, investors, customers, employees, right? For conscious leadership, it is selfless, right? Conscious leaders have to transcend the self, but it stands for strength, enthusiasm, love, flexibility, long-term orientation, emotional intelligence, systems intelligence, and spiritual intelligence. And then for culture, we have tactile, trust, authenticity, caring, transparency, etc. For purpose, I came up with the acronym HEALING, which stands for the qualities of a great purpose. It is heroic, right? It's trying to do something not easy to do, but important. It evolves as you grow as a company and the world changes. It's aligning all stakeholders together. It's loving, right? It's anything we do as human beings has to emanate from love. It's inspiring, it's natural, and it's galvanizing, right? So those were kind of the qualities of a great purpose. But then as I thought about it further, I said, you know what? It's not just describing those qualities. Actually, ultimately, every business, indeed every human, can think about their role in this life. What are we trying to do here? We're trying to reduce suffering of some kind, right? And we're trying to bring more joy. And we're trying to promote healthy growth. So that's how I think about healing: reduce suffering, elevate joy, promote healthy growth. And I said, every business, if it does its work in the right way with the right energy, is a healing organization, because you're meeting people's real needs. If you're meeting them with a genuine care, right, for reducing their suffering. If you meet somebody's real needs, you reduce their suffering in that dimension, right? And you can enable them to experience joy. So I think every business ultimately can be a healing business. So I think every purpose is a healing purpose. It has to alleviate suffering of some kind. It has to elevate joy in some dimension and promote healthy growth. So that's kind of the framing of it. And then I was full steam ahead with my research and interviews and identifying these kinds of companies and so forth. It was still, I would say, more of an intellectual exercise at that point. It's kind of a clever framing, I felt, and a more approachable way to describe what a conscious business is. To me, this is like a super conscious business that is actively seeking opportunities to reduce suffering in the world and to bring more joy in the world. And so I had identified a bunch of companies and I was doing all my work. And then I got a reality check from 4 women, friends of mine. And each of them said the same thing and said, Raj, you're constantly rushing from project to project. Before one book is finished, you're thinking about the next one. And I was traveling, I was doing 70, 80 talks a year all over the world. And so constantly at an airport or in an airplane. And they said, you're writing a book about healing now. Have you focused on your own healing? What have you done? I said, I don't have time for that. I have a book deadline in October. This was in spring that I was asked these questions, in March, April. They said, no, you need to take time off. You need to be with yourself. You need to go inward. You need to be in silence. You need to experience a variety of healing modalities that exist in the world, because how can you write about healing if you're not experiencing that for yourself, if you haven't explored that at a deep personal level? And so fortunately, I listened to them. One of them was Nilima, who I think you had on in this session, my co-author on Shakti leadership. I've learned a lot from her. Lynn Twist, who started the Pachamama Alliance, and a woman who was my coach at the time. So anyway, I then delayed that book by 5 months. And I took the summer off from writing, and I experienced a variety of different things. I went to the Himalayas with Nilima and the Shakti leadership group, the spiritual journey up in Ladakh, which is on the border between India and Tibet, which is the most deeply spiritual Buddhist region in the world. And so 8 or 9 days, that's where I had my 60th birthday. So that was also the year 2018 that I was turning 60. That's kind of a big number. It's a big milestone, I think, in your life to say, wow, it's not a midlife crisis. It's kind of a 3/4 life in some way, and it's a natural point for looking back and looking ahead and saying, what does it all mean? And how does it all make sense? And so I had that. I had a silent retreat in upstate New York with Peter Senge and David Cooper-Ryder, our common friend, and a bunch of others, about 40 of us, 4 days of silence. And that was incredible. I had, if you've never experienced silence, I strongly, strongly recommend that experience, because we are never in this life able to be silent, right? We're constantly connected to electronics. We're constantly receiving or giving information. But if you can do that, I had by the end of that about 45 pages of notes that just like downloads in a way coming to me and about my life and where I came from and why things happen in my life. And, that kind of framed the next book for me. a much more personal book. And then I went to the Amazon rainforest with Lynn Twist and the Pachamama Alliance as a part of their founders journey. About 17 of us spending 10 days deep inside the rainforest in Ecuador. Two different indigenous people there, the Achuar and the Zapara. Were literally sleeping with them, in their settlements, having these shamanic healing experiences and purifications and all kinds of ceremonies. And I had some profound experiences coming out of that, which I'm happy to share a little later. I mean, that was really life-changing. And I had gone there to learn about healing, and I got such deep wisdom about that. And I also worked with a coach for the first time, as I mentioned. And, she gave me an insight which was quite transformational after listening to the story of my work and my life and where I came from, which I haven't shared here, but I come from this very feudal, hyper-masculine, sort of abusive background in a way, misogynistic background, I would say, with a lot of toxic masculinity and the feminine being completely suppressed in that. I experienced that. And my father kind of represented a lot of that. My mother represented just the pure unconditional love that I, like most people, was trying to impress my father. She said, you realize that you spent 45 years trying to impress your father, and the last 15 years, you have been honoring your mother with your work, starting with forms of endearment. But that is bringing words like love and compassion and caring and empathy and inclusiveness into the business lexicon, where you never saw those kinds of things, right? Business is, in a way, to many people, it's a kind of war, right? It's a battlefield of the marketplace, and capturing customers and winning, destroying your competitors and all of that. So she said, you've been honoring your mother with your work for the last 15 years. And that was quite a deep insight, because I had not consciously done so, but it made sense. And that's when my work started to have impact, right? Before that, the books I wrote, about strategy or marketing or whatever they were, they were in the old paradigm, and I had nothing really to offer there, and there was nothing new about it. And the world had plenty of that energy, right? That my father represented. But this is what was needed in the world, and it was my role in this lifetime to play a part in bringing that. And so that became an incredibly healing experience, because she said, does your mother know that? I said, well, I didn't know it until 5 minutes ago. How would she know it? And she said, well, you need to call her and tell her that. And I said, oh, we don't talk like that in my family. We talk about the weather, and we talk about how your knee's feeling, and She said, no, you need to call, you need to tell her. I said, well, my dad always picks up the phone and he puts it on speaker. And if I talk like this, he'll say, what's wrong with him? Why is he talking like this? She said, doesn't matter, you need to call her. And I said, well, I'm going to India in 3 weeks. I'll just tell her in person. She said, no, your mom is 82 years old. You don't know what happens in 3 weeks. You need to tell her. So fortunately, I listened. I did. And I said these things to her. That everything I've done in the world that has mattered and made a difference is because of what you showed us. In 62 years, you never once even raised your voice at us. All you did was love us and take care of us unconditionally, right? Never asked for anything. She just started crying and said, I'm nothing, I'm nothing. And I said, no, you're everything. She thought of herself as just a house. She's just there to take care of us. My dad is like this, gold medal winning PhD scientist, and she just was educated until the 8th grade and didn't speak English, so she has thought of herself as less than. So, but anyway, that turned out to be a very, very healing thing for me. So the upshot of all of this is that I felt in the course of writing the healing organization, I unlocked a portal into my own healing. But I felt that it didn't belong in that book. I needed to write a separate book about that. So that's what I've been working on this year. And about to be done. It's in copy editing right now. But in all these books, John, I've never written about myself. Even in healing organization, I think in the preface maybe we have a little bit. But other than that, I've kept myself out of all my books, because I'm supposed to be an academic and objective and all of that, right? But I realized that the books that have had the biggest impact on me, and I'm sure for many of the people that are here today, those books are the ones where the author actually shares their own life journey, right? Whether it's Synchronicity by Joseph Jaworski, or Man's Search for Meaning, or The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist, or so many books, right? That's where you have profound learning. as Nilima said, that which is deeply personal is also completely universal. That which we think it's only my experience. Actually, no, every one of us has experienced some version of that, right? So that's what I've been exploring and writing about in this book.
Raj, thank you for bringing us along your journey. And one thing I'd like to appreciate, and then we can continue to explore what's emerged for you in this book. And let me go back to this appreciation. I appreciate so much the story of you delaying the publication by a number of months. You say that lightly, but my imagination says that's a big deal. And just you choosing to live what you're teaching, I want to appreciate, because personally for me, one of my biggest revelations and one of my biggest areas of necessary healing is the ability to get closer to living what I teach. And so I appreciate you creating a model for that, and emulating what that means to live what we teach. So tell us about, I guess I would ask, is there anything else on this journey of healing for you that you think could be insightful for us? For example, you alluded to the insights from the coach, the silent retreat. By the way, as a facilitator, and I know there's many of us here, our common bond at Xchange is we facilitate. Does anybody else find a smile on their face when they think about facilitating 4 days of silence? Is there something about that just seems like it delusionally, that sounds quite easy. Just, I'll see you in 4 days. Don't talk. That's the comedy in my mind, imagining that. But you talk about, Raj, the silent retreat, the coach. You mentioned time in ceremony with shamanic teachers. It's worth noting that the Raj Sisodia that published research on companies, I'm guessing that that's a surprise to some, to hear that you are now talking about Mother Nature and plants as a source for healing. Is there anything else to share with us on that? Because that's significant.
Yeah, and this is very new to me. Until 2018, I had no idea about any of this this work that has been around for tens of thousands of years. Most ancient civilizations had some version of plant medicines that they used, obviously for every kind of physical condition, but also that there were things that profoundly helped them through life transitions, in terms of impacting their consciousness and awareness and understanding of life. And so this was in 2018 that I had a friend who was telling me about these plant journeys. And she said she had really been benefited by that and healed by it. And she had gone through some significant big challenge, 3-4 things that came together in her life suddenly, and everything fell apart. And so this is how she was helped by it. And so I didn't quite understand what she meant. But I said, okay, that sounds, one thing about it, I tend to be quite open to, I don't know what I don't know. And therefore, when somebody says there's something profound here, I tend to try and be open about it and listen. So I said, sure, I trust you. And so I'll come along for one of these things. And I thought literally that we were going to be eating a little potted plant of some kind, maybe it's some vegetable that maybe has some, nice medicinal properties or something, But that turned out to be a powerful experience for me. This was in March of 2018, my first experience. And the person who was guiding us, had become a shaman herself, and because she had gone through a severe trauma in her own life, losing her husband and 3 children in a car accident years earlier, and her life just shattered. And the only thing that brought her back was plants. Nothing else worked. And then she was so impacted that she started offering this to others. And everybody I met there had gone through something pretty serious, pretty intense. But that first journey, which was for me, it was like watching a movie of my life, when I was very little, showing me the village in which I lived the first 5 years in this feudal family, with my grandfather being the overlord of the village, and and all the abuse. He would yell at the women, and they would be sitting on the ground with their heads covered. He would scream at them for an hour, and one of my aunts would put some opium in my mouth to knock me out so that my mom could keep working. All that kind of stuff. There was just a lot of everybody, kind of preying on each other. And what I got out of that was that there were these lights, points of innocence, that everybody is in a way corrupted in that system. But there was some, my mother and me and, one other cousin. So this idea of a return to innocence, we are all born innocent, then we get corrupted into the ways of the world inside some level, right? And most of us never find our way back to that innocence, where we are not, to blame. We're not seeking to use our intelligence to exploit anybody, to take advantage of anybody. We're not trying to climb over anybody. We have goodwill. So that was kind of an important lesson for me. And it showed me that I had to witness and experience the worst abuses of the masculine, so that 45, 50 years later, whenever it was, I could write a book about the feminine, right? The Shakti leadership book. So it was it kind of helped pieces of my life fall into place, right? Like, why this, because of that. So everything that happened, there's really a purpose and a meaning behind it, right? There's value in it that you can figure out at some point in your life what that meant. Right? So that was the beginning of the journey. And then when I went to Ecuador and with the Pachamama Alliance, the centerpiece of that was an ayahuasca ceremony. And it was an incredible day-long experience. We went first for a hike through the rainforest with the shaman to a sacred waterfall. We had a cleansing ceremony there. And then we hiked to the settlement where the shaman lived on the banks of a river. And we bathed in the river, and it was getting to be dusk time. We lay down on banana leaves on the dirt floor, on the dirt ground outside. It was a lunar eclipse night. You could see literally 6 planets lined up from horizon to horizon. And then we had the brew. And then the shaman came around, with swishing these branches and whistling and chanting. And so it was a really surreal experience. And then I started to have these visions. The first thing that happened for me is I just cried for about an hour. I don't know how long, actually. But I had been emotionally blocked and bottled up for a very long time for a variety of reasons. And I couldn't even cry when people died. I mean, it was like, what's wrong with me, right? Why can't I? I thought I was a sensitive person, but somehow I had been emotionally blocked for various reasons that I did understand later. And then this just kind of the floodgates opened, and I expressed all of this unexpressed grief. This expression, grief is love with nowhere to go, right? And this is grief that I had bottled up, for a variety of reasons. And then after that, I started having all these visions. I shared the one earlier about the Amma and all the people, right? And then the biggest one I had that night was, I got these 4 words floating in my vision. And, I had gone there to learn about healing. That's what Lynn Twist said. You need to come on this journey with us. You're going to learn more about healing in these 10 days than you could in years of research. And so I trusted her and I went. And so I said, I want to learn about healing. That was my intention going into that experience. So I get these 4 words floating in my vision as I'm lying there. And they came as a preformed acronym. I didn't even have to create my own acronym. It came as the list. Right? This is what the world needs to heal. This is what business needs to heal. This is what each of us need to heal. And the 4 words were love, innocence, simplicity, and truth. Love, innocence, simplicity, and truth. That we have gotten far away from these in our lives. That everything we do should emanate from love. And yet so much of what we do comes from fear, comes from greed, right? Or other motivations. Everything we do should come from love. Innocence. We are all born innocent, but then we get corrupted. How can we go back and reclaim our innocence? How can we have the innocence of a whole adult? The wholeness, the innocence on the other side of wholeness, the chosen innocence of a strong human being, right? Not the helpless innocence of a baby, but the chosen innocence. That I am not responsible for the suffering of anybody else. My mother used to say to me, just don't bring pain to anybody else's heart. Okay, don't bring unnecessary pain to anybody else's heart. I mean, that's a very innocent way to live, right? Not to be the cause of anyone else's suffering. So love, innocence, simplicity, The most important things in life are simple. Reminds me of that book, Everything I Needed to Know. I learned in kindergarten. Remember that? We hide behind complexity. Think about the 2008 financial crisis. It was a crisis of complexity. We created all these exotic financial instruments that nobody understood, and the primary purpose of which was to trick other people into giving you their money. We need to return to, as I said last week, the simplicity on the other side of complexity. It's not about being simplistic. There's being simplistic, and then there's the simplicity on the other side of complexity, which is a profound simplicity. When Einstein said E equals mc squared, I mean, nothing could be simpler, and yet what it took to get there, right? You had to go through an enormous complexity to arrive at that simplicity on the other side. And then truth. What is our commitment to the truth? In business, in politics, in our own lives, with ourselves, with each other. Gandhi's autobiography was called My Experiments with Truth. I mean, truth is seen as a fundamental, one of the highest values, right? So how can we recommit to that? So that to me was a gift that came through me, which I've written about in this in this new book, And then I had some other things as well, but I think that was really the primary one that I experienced from that journey. And then some of the other ones that, love that is not expressed is like a check that is not cashed. It doesn't do any good for anybody, right? We have to express what we feel. Like, I had those feelings for my mom. I never said it to her in 62 years. And she had no idea. And she thought her life was wasted and she didn't amount to anything and had no impact whatsoever. And then, near the end of her life, she got that feeling that, or belief that, yeah, maybe, it did make a difference. Yeah. But if I hadn't done that, it would have done no good for it. It turned out to be the most healing conversation of my life and perhaps of her life, And I think that possibility exists, for each of the people on this call today. If there's somebody who has had such a huge impact on your life and you've just taken that for granted, or you've never said anything about it, I mean, I would urge you to reach out and let them know, because these are the most meaningful experiences that human beings can have, to hear that kind of appreciation.
Raj, thank you for for being so open, not just with us, but in your life, and then telling us about your journey, because you're choosing to be abundantly, infinitely open, and some would consider that a risk. You might consider it a risk at this point to not be open. But to go from the guy doing the research to the journey that you've taken to just openly sharing that with us, I feel like you're modeling something that even if I can't find the words to fully comprehend it, it's an invitation for all of us to ask what's really true and what journey do we each have to go on. And I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, John. I think it's so important. There's so much extraordinary suffering that there is a way to help people with that, but we have these stupid laws, right, that came out of fear, right? Nixon banned all these things in 1970 because Timothy Leary said these kids are not going to fight your wars for you or something like that. And Nixon labeled him the most dangerous man in America, and they banned all of these things that have extraordinary potential to heal. And, it's coming back now. These things are starting, a lot of research happening, and it's getting legalized in parts of this country and many parts of the world. I mean, just to take trauma, PTSD, I mean, 25 US veterans commit suicide every day because nothing we do in the traditional paradigm has helped them, right? They take these drugs that just kind of numb them or, knock them out. They're barely functioning as human beings through all of that. So, it's a double insult. We send them into these egregiously violent situations, and then we have nothing to offer them when they are grievously wounded. And now the research is showing that with just one or two experiences, with the MDMA, for example, that people are experiencing miraculous cure. They're getting their life back. Kids are getting their fathers back or mothers back, So yeah, it is foolish, I think. And I feel like I have an obligation, if I have experienced something and learned something, to share it. And open these things up, I've often realized that, the whole line between what is legal and what is right, It's not always equivalent, right? There are many things that are illegal that in one place that could get you killed, and somebody else, somewhere else it's not. So it's just silly. So yeah, I'm I try to now live as transparently and openly as possible. I think that ultimately it's about full alignment, between, as you were saying, who we are and what we say and what we do in every aspect of our life should be aligned and in harmony. And be different people at work and at home, right? And likewise, all of these things need to be openly talked about, I think.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for the gift of being with us thus far today. I'd like to give everybody here right now a question. By the way, how many of you have enjoyed our time thus far with Raj? I have all of you on gallery, so I can see all of you. I know you probably have us real big. I want to give all of you a question. And then Raj, if there is anything else, there will be space for you to bring that in when we're done. But we're going to transition for a moment. And one of the things that we stand for here at Exchange is when we're given the gift of a teacher or a teaching that holds within it the seeds of discovery, the way that Raj brought to us, we want to create a space before you all leave and go on to your next Zoom meeting or wherever you're going to next, to pause, right? This is a lesson itself from Mother Nature, right? Everything important happens in human beings when we push pause. On a machine, that's when things stop working. Here, that's where things start working. So honoring experiential learning and what Mother Nature has to say. I want to give all of you a pause and ask you a simple question. Simple question is this: what is the most important gift that the last hour has brought to you? Hour and however many minutes. What is the most important gift that Raj Sisodia brought to you through his presence today? It could be something that was shared, something that you felt, something that you heard, or what was not said. But what's been the most important gift that you'd like to take away from this experience today? I'm going to give you just about a brief 10 to 15 seconds to reflect on what comes up for you when you think about the most important gift that you'd like to take from today. Maybe it's a realization, a distinction, a discovery, an appreciation, a return to something simple and true, a reminder of where you've been or where you could go. What's been the most important gift? And as you're identifying that gift, if you would like to bring your eyes up to the screen, you'll probably be in groups of 3. And here's what we'll ask you to do. Just invite each person to share. You'll be in these groups for just about 3 to 4 minutes. We'll let you know when there's 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute left. It'll be brief, but we'll be dropping you into breakouts one more time before you come back and before we officially close out this segment. So again, in your groups, just have each person share. And if you get all the way through and you're still in the group, feel free to have a meaningful exploration or acknowledge anything anybody shared that touched you. Here comes the blue buttons. We'll see you all in just a few minutes. The greatest gift that you'd like to take away from our time together today. Steve, that move you pulled with Leo yesterday was pretty smooth.
Like that? Yeah, he was excited.
That was so great.
I had him practicing all morning. It kept him busy.
I guess I forget that I've got all the answers, and I forget that I've got all I need. And guess I forget that the path isn't easy, and what I seek is already in me. When will I learn?
Hi, Steve Havel.
That I've got this.
Frank, nice to have you as a guest today. Anna, Linda, Marnie. Welcome back, everybody. And everyone else will be back in just a second here. All right. Welcome back, welcome back. I would like to invite, before we give Raj the final word, would like to invite a handful of you to express briefly as an act of kindness, so we can get a handful of voices in directly to Raj, the greatest gift that he brought to you today. We'll start with you, Steve Havill, then Sally coming your way, and then we'll keep going from there. Steve, great to see you. Go right ahead, Steve.
See you too, John. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
So there's a few things, so please forgive me. I want to take an extra second here. First of all, Raj, I'm just so grateful to have you here in this community. And I met Raj the same day I met Dr. Danny in 2013 at my first conscious capitalism movement in San Francisco. And I want to just acknowledge you, Raj, as really the heart of the movement. That's who you've always been for me. Your orientation of that was really what drew me in, what activated my passion, and what had me commit several years of my life to the movement. So I want to really just let you know how that really launched me into my big path of service as a catalyst for the movement, as a board president, and then also to help with chapters over the years. But the big thing that I'd like to share with you is dozens of times I've been inspired by you and the wisdom that you've shared on stage. And I've seen you speak probably over 100 times, but today was different. Today was so powerful. Your heart is so open and just so courageously vulnerable and present. The things you shared today moved me more than anything I'd ever heard you say on any of the previous conversations. So I just want to honor you for being such a huge mentor to me and to so many others to really activate and bring in, usher in a new age of business. And what I really was most moved by was the gift and the power of your vulnerability, that deepening of the reminder of, you know, what it is to be a truth teller about our past experiences, with super transparency and vulnerability about our growth journey and some of the edges that we don't often like to talk about, and also just the power of just really speaking the truth and being really, really present to what's true and honoring that and modeling the way for so many of us. So thank you so much for all you've been and all you are and all you will be as you move forward in your journey. Thank you, my friend and brother.
Thank you, Steve. I'm overwhelmed by your words. Thank you so much. I'm very touched. Thank you.
Steve, thank you. Sally, coming to you, and then Dr. Karen right after that. Sally, please.
Thank you, John.
Right
Thank you, John. I'll try to be very succinct, and thank you so much, Raj. I'm just going to say that the greatest gift that you gave me was an affirmation of what I feel and what I know, which is living in love with purpose, speaking my truth, doing no harm, caring for others, and being authentic are what I live by. And as long as I keep that in my heart and I continue to do that, I know that I can help others to heal. And I thank you so much for sharing all that you shared with us.
Thank you.
Sally, thank you. Dr. Karen, and then after that, we'll come to Bonnie. Karen, please.
Yes, Raj, thank you so much for what you shared today. I met you for the first time last week and became aware of you and your work. I love the fact that your parents are behind you. It just brings me such joy whenever I see that. And what I really appreciate is knowing that somebody is out there writing about what I've actually been doing in my work for more than 30 years. I'm working with corporate executives in large global organizations, and this is what's needed. I call it positive leadership for positive business results. And so it's refreshing to hear that you've written about it in a cogent way, in a way that's useful, in a way that encourages me and validates the work that I've been doing for this time and I'll continue to do. And you also gave me some impetus for a fast that my church is going to be entering into in the beginning of January. I saw the corporate vision of it for the church, and I've been thinking about what is the part for me that's going to come out of this fast. And so as you were sharing your different spiritual journeys, I see, you know, what God is calling me to. And I'll just share a snippet of a Bible verse that really came to me as you were talking about plants and you were talking about all of that. And that is that I am fearfully and wonderfully made by God. That means he has resourced our bodies. He's resourced this planet for us to really be able to benefit. There's something about that that's going to come into a greater sense of focus for me in 2022. So thank you so much, Raj, for sharing what you shared today and helping me to bring that forward.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. Thank you. It's lovely to meet you.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. Bonnie, please go right ahead.
All right. So unlike Steve, Raj is totally new in my world. I met Raj last week in a breakout room in OXC, and I truly appreciate my breakout room partners, Amanda and Marnie. We all shared our gifts, and they were all the same answer, but in a different way. And the gift that we all received is the gift of the message that it's never too late and there's always time. So we appreciate that, you took the time to pause and you listened to mentors. You were willing to hiring a coach at a later age. And we just appreciate so much that you are, just like what Steve said, modeling all of this for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Bonnie, thank you. I'm going to ask Brett and Kimberly to be forgiving and understanding that I'm going to need to close this out. And by the way, Brett and Kimberly, it is really good to see each of you. Raj, I'd love to know if there's anything else you want to say. Before you do that, I want to extend an invitation and a reminder to everybody here. So first, the invitation. For those of you who are here today as guests, we hope that this was meaningful and worthwhile at a minimum. If you are curious about what we do at Exchange, I'll give you 2 ways to learn about us. Really simple. Our team will put a link in the Zoom chat box sometime in January. I think it's January 14th. We have a 2-hour introduction to Exchange workshop. I'll be leading it personally. If you want to experience what we do in an experiential sense, exchangeapproach.com/workshop. It's in the Zoom chat box. Or if you'd like to speak to somebody directly on our admissions team, you could put a note in the chat box right now that says, I want to chat with someone. I want to find out what this is all about. And our admissions team will gladly follow up with you. You can put any note you want, says, I would love to chat with somebody at Exchange, or you can send that note to me privately. Either one is cool. For everybody else, before we come to Raj for the final word, I am going to share my screen. And I'm going to share my screen because I want to remind all of you of some of the things that we have available for you very soon. Inner Circle, we're going to meet with Raj in a few minutes. Next week, Monday, December 20th, we are celebrating Dr. Danny Friedland's life here on Zoom. All of you who are here are invited. Danny's had a huge impact on us. I know many of you will be joining us. And I appreciate in advance all of you bringing your whole selves to that special experience. If you want to attend any of these events, you can go into our Facebook group, you can RSVP, and you'll make sure to get notifications. Exchange team, if you can link to these, thank you. In the Zoom chat, you can also click 2 times, once and then twice to RSVP. Steve will be leading a design studio. Yes, Dan.
I just wanted to mention that a couple of people have texted me or messaged me saying that they got a notification that Danny's celebration has been canceled. It has not been canceled. It's still on. Who knows what's going on with Google, but it's still happening.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Steve will be leading probably our last design studio of the year on Tuesday. For those of you who are brand new here as members, there's that orientation for you, Tuesday the 21st. Inner Circle, I'll see you on the 22nd. Our business development circle for our unlimited members on December 22nd. Last chance to get dialed in to grow your businesses next year. January 6th, we're going to combine live musical performances with reflective questions to harvest the wisdom of 2021 and to create the 2022 that you'd like. That's a half-day event that's open to all Exchange members. January 6th, Sounds of Transformation. I'm going to move ahead here. Any of you who identify as or want to hang out with coaches in our community, our coaches circle, RSVP if you plan on attending, because we make plans based on who we believe is coming. So thank you. Yes, mentor session with Jackie and Sherry. And then I just want to draw all of your attention to January 25th, our 3-day immersion, Awakening Conscious Leadership. And by the way, along with Debbie Rosman, the CEO at the HeartMath Institute, Raj Sisodia is also going to be a member of our faculty for the Awakening Conscious Leadership training. He'll be participating in the 3 days, just like many of you, and also contributing as a teacher. Raj, thank you for that. Any of these events, if any of you ever have any questions, you can always, you know where to find us. If you're here as a guest, it was wonderful to be with you today. Raj, is there anything else that you wanted to share as we part ways with the main session here?
But first of all, I want to thank you, John, and I want to thank everybody for participating so fully and all the kind sentiments that people have expressed. Really, it's the most meaningful thing other than my family and my life is the work. There's 2 thoughts that came to me to share. That in my book, I talk about these 5 steps, right? That we need to all go through at some level. You have to know yourself. Who are you, really, before the world got a hold of you? What's your essence? You have to love yourself. And that's not an easy step for many of us. And for me, to the extent that I knew myself, I despised myself for decades because my father convinced me that everything that came naturally to me was a weakness, that I was too idealistic, that I was too peace-loving, that I was too, harmony-seeking, too trusting, etc. So know yourself, love yourself, and then be yourself. Right? This is what the world calls on us, to express ourselves fully in the world. Heal yourself, recognize traumas. I've had, in the course of writing this book, I've uncovered some traumas, some memories that I had even buried. And as James Baldwin said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. So we have to actually see reality as it was and understand what we have to heal from. And then choose your life. Everything that happened in the past, you can't actually change it, of course. But if you consciously say, you know what, I choose all those experiences, because if you do, then they can serve you. You can grow from them and learn from them. If you don't, then you kind of remain trapped in a victim mentality. I can say, why did I grow up in that kind of family or have this kind of father or whatever? Right? So I think choosing your life. And then the last thing I'll say, both my parents passed away in 2019 suddenly. And it was very interesting to observe the reactions that happened. My father passed first, and then my mother 4 months later. But it's at the end of your life, is there the overwhelming sentiment? Is it going to be grief or is it going to be relief? And this was sort of a stark realization that I had. Even when my grandfather died, there was only relief, because he was such a harsh, tough patriarch, controlled everybody's life. And unfortunately, when my father died, there was very little grief expressed. And when my mother died, everybody's hearts were broken and overflowing with grief, And it kind of gave me a glimpse into what happens at the end of life. What is going to be the overwhelming feeling that people experience at that moment? Is it going to be grief or is it going to be relief? And so that kind of, for me, as I said, was a kind of a sad but profound realization about that. That's kind of the ultimate summation in a way of the impact we had. So just wanted to share that as a final reflection. And again, thank you all for being here.
You're muted, John.
You're muted, John.
Look at how many friends I have right now. Raj, thank you. I'm just smiling at the depth and significance of even your just final thoughts. It means the whole world. Thank you again, everybody. What a pleasure to be here today. Raj, thank you. I know you and I will be connecting for many ways, many reasons, but this was a special gift for you to give your time to all of us and to some of our guests today. So thank you. If you all would like, you're welcome to unmute and give a thank you to Raj on your way out. And then Inner Circle, you can hang tight. We'll just start up in a few minutes here.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you so much, Raj.
Thank you, Raj. It was
Thank you.
excellent. Thank you for your heart, Raj.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
From the heart. Thank you.
Well, as everybody makes their way out, a handful of you who are Inner Circle members, you're welcome to hang tight. And then we'll start up in just a couple minutes. Steve, Brett, so good to see you guys. Take care.
Goodbye, everyone. Love you. Good to see you.
Cheers.
I'll be back in a few minutes.
Yeah, take your time.